everybody, welcome back to the family channel.
Hello.
Hi.
As you can see, Leia's gone again. She went with her friends out to town.
Yeah, she's not just gone.
Yeah, don't worry guys. And today we are going to be reacting to top 10 most beautiful states in America.
That's right, well done. Yeah, as Garen says, we're going to be checking out the top 10 most beautiful states in America. I'm hoping Texas is there, just because I'm trying to convince these two still. As always, if you haven't done so, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. That'll be very, very kind of you. Without further ado, let's check out the top 10 most beautiful states in America.
Before I say anything else, I have to say it isn't nice to judge. Every state is both beautiful and ugly in its own way. Take California, for example. On the one hand, you have Yosemite and Big Sur, but on the other hand, well, you have Skid Row and Stockton. To be completely honest with you, this was one of the—
I actually watched a video on Skid Row today. It's so sad what's going on there. People are like zombies.
I know, I've seen the news about it.
There's
It's actually
opioids
scary.
and stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
hardest lists I've ever made because I really love the nature in so many states. But the West really is best when it comes to beautiful and unique scenery. Now, don't get me wrong, I grew up in the Northeast, and while there is a lot of charm to the small towns and wooded habitats there, it just doesn't compare to the majestic vistas and untouched wilderness found in the West. But don't worry, there are some eastern states on the list too. It does have a special place in my heart after all. Anyways, I ranked the states by their natural landmarks, national and state parks, eco-diversity, and accessibility to nature.
No, it's like
that looked like
natural landmarks, national and state.
That didn't look real.
It's like from a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, it's beautiful though.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
By the way, everyone, I was showing Kat today. I went downstairs to show Kat some airfares today. We checked the prices of tickets, and I was quite shocked to find out that coming over to the States in August is actually cheaper than October. The reason I was looking at both dates is because if we were to come over, in some miracle we were to come over in October or in October, we'd need to get permission to get the kids out of school because otherwise we could get into big trouble here in Slovakia. But August is when they're on summer holidays, is actually only like a couple of $100 or euros more expensive. So that is going to work as all fine. We'll keep you posted though.
Parks, eco-diversity, and accessibility to nature. Forget about good jobs or city amenities. I mean, who cares about money when you're surrounded by this? Probably goes without saying, but this video isn't for the material girls. So here's to you fellow nature lovers, and if you aren't a nature lover, well, keep watching to see why you should be. Because these are the top 10 most beautiful states in America. Number 10, Maine. I know you're probably thinking, what? That doesn't look like Maine. Well, that's because it isn't. It honestly was really hard to choose which state to put at number 10.
Do you know what you can get in lovely in Maine? Lobster, baby.
Oh,
So I'm starting the list off with an honorable mention. South Dakota. Wait, what? South Dakota? Yeah, it might come as a surprise if you've never been here, but that's because it's incredibly underrated. I was blown away on my first visit, and not just because the Wind Cave. From natural grasslands to the Badlands to Sparefish Canyon and Custer State Park to the Black Hills, which are a heck of a lot more than just 4 dead guys' faces on a rock. The diversity of nature in the Mount Rushmore state is mind-boggling. I seriously have no clue why it's one of the least visited states in the country. But enough with my South Dakota obsession. Actual number 10 is Maine. You might not have given the Pine Tree State much thought if you live outside of New England, but as a New Englander myself, my family would take trips up here almost every summer, and let me tell ya, it is beautiful. Outside the Portland metro area, no, not the one in Oregon, the state is pretty much just untouched, gorgeous nature and real.
It can get confusing if you don't know the geography, how it keeps jumping around.
Yeah.
Because I was like, what?
Really cute, charming small towns, which means there are endless opportunities for adventure, whether you want to hike, ski, swim, kayak, hunt, or fish. And if you're lucky, or maybe unlucky if you get too close, you might even see a moose. Maine's honestly one of the best kept secrets on the East Coast. From jutting cliffs to stunning beaches, if you include all the islands, Maine actually has more miles of coastline than even California. And speaking of islands, have you seen Mount Desert Island? It's home to Acadia National Park, which is pretty much the crown jewel of Maine. There really is no other place in America quite like it. Number 9,
It's
amazing
Michigan.
that that's not
Now,
a
this
nine.
might be surprising too, but
Michigan.
Michigan's actually another state with more coastline than California. Granted, it's just surrounded by really big lakes, but they're
That's a
so
lake.
big that it almost feels.
That's a lake. That's insane.
You
I
were
did a
telling me
reaction.
about it the other day.
Yeah, I did a reaction on Patreon about. I've got a terrible memory. It was about a wreck in Fitzgerald, I think it was, and I thought it was in the sea. It was in a storm in the lake. I had no idea that the water could get so rough in a lake. That's how big they are. It's crazy.
It's a lake.
Yeah.
It's like the ocean. You may have heard of the famously old-fashioned
Whoa.
Mackinac Island, where cars are forbidden and horses and buggies transport
Larry
you
would
back
love
in
it, dude.
time around the Victorian
Yeah.
town. But have you heard of Isle Royale National Park? The 400-island archipelago is actually the least visited national park in the contiguous United States, mainly because the only way to get there is a 3-hour-long ferry. But if you make the trip, or honestly just go anywhere in the Upper Peninsula, the wildlife and scenery you encounter will literally feel like a movie. And let's not forget the multicolored Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, the isolated hilly beaches at Sleeping Bear Dunes, and Headlands
I've
International
seen- yeah,
Dark
I've
Sky
seen
Park,
those
which is one of the
videos where they
best
go down
places to
right
see the
there.
stars, and if you're lucky, the Northern Lights. I could go on and on about the beauty of Michigan. I mean, there are freaking ice caves and a rock jutting out of the water that looks like a turnip. Number 8, Oregon.
The
When you think
turnip.
of
Like,
He sold me with the
seriously.
turnip.
It's impossible. There's so many things
Uh-huh.
in America
Yeah.
that are like just amazing.
That's why
aren't
everyone's.
they?
That's why I bring it up quite a few times. Like in England, they always say, "Oh, like the US people are uncultured. They don't want to travel the world." What do you need to? You've got everything
Yeah.
in your own country.
Yeah.
It's
Probably even more.
More, yeah, more. It's insane.
Oregon, you probably just think of hipsters in Portland,
But
or
that's
maybe
a trick.
something like this
That's a
or
bridge
this.
for
But the
train.
Beaver State has pretty much every type of biome imaginable. You probably didn't know this was in Oregon or this. The ecosystems here are seriously so dang diverse that each region feels like its own country. From
This is
beautiful
the-
beaches
oh,
bordered by
like,
sinkholes, sand
in the back
dunes,
here,
and
the
giant
top
rock
section.
islands, to lush national forests teeming with literally thousands of streams and waterfalls, to charming artsy towns like
Thousands.
Ashland, Bend, and Hood River, the entire state just feels enchanted. The Cascade Range also runs through the middle of Oregon and is home to some of the most beautiful mountains in the country, and Crater Lake National Park, which is literally a giant
I'm
blue
so
lake at the
jealous.
top of a
Yes, it is.
volcanic
Uh-huh.
crater. It's honestly one of the most unique and gorgeous settings I've ever seen. And I haven't even mentioned the
water, how
eastern half of
still
the
it was.
state, with places like the Painted Hills and Owyhee Canyon lands that you'll swear must be photoshopped. Oh, and there's also Hell's Canyon, aka the deepest gorge in North America, with a nearly 8,000-foot vertical drop into the Snake River. Needless to say, there's a lot more to Oregon than just Portland. Number 7. Colorado. Denver might be overrated, but there's a reason why so many people are moving to, or at least vacationing, in the Centennial State. Take a drive on I-70 and you'll see why. Every curve of the interstate reveals a breathtaking view of the Rockies before following the Eagle and Colorado rivers through the canyons into a landscape that looks like Mars. And this is honestly the least scenic route. The mountains are just gorgeous all around, with 58 peaks exceeding 14,000 feet. By far the most of any state. In fact, there are only 4 states in the country that even have one 14,000 footer. But while the Front Range is magical, Colorado is so much more than just a beautiful mountainous region full of world-class ski resorts and hikes. Head to the southwest near Durango and you'll
love
find
to
some
do
of the
that.
most well-preserved Native American pueblos
I
at
would
Mesa
go
Verde
there,
National
like,
Park. Or you can head to Colorado
Yeah.
Springs to find some of the most beautiful red rock formations at Garden of the Gods. And Colorado's also home to the tallest sand dunes in North America. This state is honestly so diverse that even
It's
if you
got
spend
mountains, snow, sand dunes.
Yes, and
It's got everything.
your entire
Canyons.
life here, it still wouldn't be long enough to explore all the unique environments the area has to offer.
I do love a waterfall.
Number 6,
I like taking photos of
Washington. Seattle and rain are probably the first 2 words that come to mind when you think of Washington. But this state is so much more. Don't get me wrong, on the days where it isn't misty and rainy and you can actually see, Seattle's one of the most picturesque cities in the world. But the constant rain kinda is what makes the Evergreen State stay, well, evergreen. Speaking of evergreen, North Cascades National Park might be one of the most beautiful places on Earth. I mean, have you seen Mount Shuksan? Well, probably not, because it's also one of the least visited national parks, which is weird since it's only a 2-hour drive from Seattle. But even closer to Seattle are the majestic Olympic Mountains, and even closer is Mount Rainier, which is the most prominent peak in the continental United States, and also an active volcano. But hey, I'm not here to judge Seattleites' life decisions. It really was hard to choose which Pacific Northwest state to put higher on this list, but while Oregon is very geographically diverse, Washington is even more diverse. The Evergreen State is home to 63 different mountain ranges, the largest expanse of temperate rainforest in the U.S., tons of waterfalls, rivers, lakes, and ecologically unique islands, the Columbia River Gorge and the Scablands, the Palouse Hills, and charming mountain towns like Leavenworth. You know, maybe it is worth living under an active volcano to be near all that.
I'd love it.
Number 5. Utah. From the Rocky Mountains to desert canyons, it isn't hard to see why Utah has the third most national parks in the country. You've probably heard of Zion and Arches. And no, that's not the moon. That's just Canyonlands National Park. There's also Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef National Park, and a boatload of national monuments and forests, which are equally as impressive. As you can see, Utah...
And it looks like the exact canyons.
Well, they take a lot of inspiration in the
And I
games
jump
from
from
places.
it and I always fall.
shares a lot of similarities with Colorado and Arizona, but also has a lot of uniquely Utah things too. And I'm not talking about fry sauce. Besides the national parks, there are 43 state parks, and no, I'm not about to list them all, but just look at how pretty they are. The coolest thing about Utah, in my opinion, though, is that most of the nature is completely untouched, and aside from the super popular national parks and ski resorts like Zion and Park City, it's almost never overcrowded with tourists. If it had a coastline, Utah would probably be number one on this list, but it doesn't. And before you say, hey, what about the Great Salt Lake? Nobody actually likes how the Great Salt Lake looks, or smells for that matter. Number 4, California. I know a lot of you are probably wondering, why isn't California number 1?
See,
I mean,
can't get
it is the most...
how they... Look how close they build those buildings to the sea.
Yeah, what if like a tsunami comes?
Or not even that, just
Maybe
a big
it's a
high
high
tide. Yeah, I don't know.
A lot of you are probably wondering, why isn't California number 1? I mean, it is the most geographically diverse state in the country by far, housing nearly every type of climate zone in the world. But the one thing keeping it out of even the top 3 on my list is just all the overcrowding and pollution. Even though most of the national parks are 4 to 5 hours out of the cities, there are still so many people. Sure, there are a few secret spots where you can find some peace and quiet, but if you aren't a local and don't know what you're doing, you're never gonna find them. What you will find is 3,400 miles of pristine coastline and some of the best beaches in the world. To the south, you have La Jolla and Laguna, but more north, there's also Carmel, Moonstone Beach, Bowling Ball Beach, and the incredible Big Sur. But actually, don't go there because the locals do everything they can to hide the best spots from tourists. So why don't you head on over to one of the 9 national parks or over 300 state parks instead, both numbers being the most of any state. Try Yosemite, the Redwoods, or even Death Valley. Seriously, I cannot state this enough. Almost every type of scenery imaginable is here. The problem is that people litter and their pollution is destroying the environment and not nearly enough funds.
Okay, not very similar. It's actually not similar at all, but it does remind me of Durban beachfront where we grew up. At the pools and stuff there.
They're being allocated to protect it. But what can I say? It's not like money grows on trees. And even if it did, California would have probably burned through it by now. Pun intended.
It was recently, wasn't it?
Number 3,
years ago.
Hawaii. Hawaii is by far the smallest state on this list, so I guess it goes to show that size doesn't matter. Because what the Aloha state lacks in size, it makes up for in sheer beauty. There really isn't a single part of the islands that isn't jaw-droppingly gorgeous. Each of the 7 inhabited islands is entirely different in its own way, but some notable views are the Nepali coast and Waimea Canyon on Kauai, the bamboo forest Honokohau Falls, and the road to Hana on Maui, the sea cliffs of Molokai, Lanikai Beach and the Coco Head crater on Oahu, and Mauna Kea and Volcanic National Park on Big Island. In fact, the Big Island alone has 11 of the world's 13 climate zones. From the history to the culture to the waterfalls, volcanoes, hiking, and world-class snorkeling swimming and surfing, Hawaii is one of the most unique and
there.
diverse states in the country.
like the
Not to
ground.
mention the nearly perfect weather with tropical temperatures and 270 sunny days a year.
Perfect.
Number 2. Montana. In contrast to the last two
that's gonna be
states,
Texas.
Montana has exactly
I don't know.
0 miles of coastline. So how the heck did it make it so high on this
yeah,
list?
maybe.
If you're seriously
You were talking
asking
about
that
Montana
question,
recently, weren't you?
coastline.
Yeah.
So how that's to the
Yeah.
last two states, Montana has exactly 0 miles of coastline. So how the heck did it make it so high on this list? If you're seriously asking that question, you need to visit the Big Sky State, where yes, the sky really does seem bigger. We all know Colorado is the Rocky Mountain state, but honestly, the Rockies in Montana remain unparalleled. The mountains loom majestically over vast and colorful valleys dotted by the lakes, rivers, and wildlife that run through them. A trip to Yellowstone will leave you
so
bewildered by the power of nature, but the lesser known Glacier National Park is actually, in my opinion, the most beautiful national park in America. And in the eastern half of the
That's a
state, you have a
statement.
complete contrast
Look
with
at
places
that.
like Makoshika State Park
You
with
can
its
find some
badlands and
snakes there.
dinosaur fossils. There are actually 55
And
state
did you
parks
hear
in
what he
this
said?
park with its badlands and dinosaur fossils. There are
Dinosaur
actually
fossils.
55 state parks in the state, including the Lewis and Clark Caverns, Flathead Lake, Palisade and Kootenai Falls, and Bighorn Canyon. But honestly, the entire state could be a national park. Drive through just about anywhere here, and you'll have a hard time finding a view that doesn't look like a painting, even in the urban areas like Missoula or Bozeman. And on a clear night,
photographer's
you
dream.
might even see the northern lights. Now, before we get to number 1, leave a like, subscribe, and let me know what you think the most beautiful state is. But without further ado, number 1. Alaska. Speaking of the Northern
Alaska.
Lights, could
See,
number 1
I'm
really
telling
be
you.
anything but? Alaska is more grand, vast, and untamed than any other state. And it's not even close. It even has more
Don't get me wrong, I would love to go in there to see it, but it's just too. You've seen me here. I just don't function well in the cold at all.
Yeah, but you need to just like dress properly.
yeah, but
and then you're fine.
I
You-
don't like wrapping up. I feel so uncomfortable when I got a jacket, 3 shirts, a vest, 2
But
pairs
like
of long
for a few
johns.
days, wouldn't-
Ooh, yeah, for a few days it'll be fine, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not asking
A
you to
day.
stay there for. Oh,
A day.
coastline than every
Yeah,
other
ice.
state
Is it
combined.
frozen? No.
And that coast varies widely from the volcanic Aleutian Islands to glacier-lined black sand beaches to craggy cliffs to forested fjords. Sure, it does
It
get
is
really
nice.
cold in
It's
some
beautiful.
parts, but there is a heck of a lot more to Alaska than just snow-capped mountains. The last frontier is home to 8 national parks, each featuring incredibly different landscapes, ranging from
Yeah.
Denali, home of the tallest mountain in North America, to Kenai Fjords, gates of the Arctic, Glacier Bay, and Wrangell St. Elias, which is actually the largest national park in the nation. And while there are also 156 state parks to boot, Alaska's still the least visited state in the US, which might be due to the fact that there aren't many roads leading to the parks. You'll actually have to charter a plane to get to most of them. But that's also why the population density is just
yeah.
1 person per square mile. So there are literally thousands of miles of untouched unique wilderness, and you're probably more likely to run into a bear, moose, or muskox than another person in the
person,
nature
yeah.
here. Where else can you find over half the world's glaciers, fjords all along the coast, rainforests, volcanoes, the 10 tallest mountains in the country,
Stop
and
it,
even
yeah.
sand dunes? Alaska is by far the
know how those
most
came up. Maybe
beautiful
it didn't
state
download
in
properly.
America. So,
What the heck is that?
see.
Yeah.
I know. It is beautiful. I'm not denying that it's beautiful
I mean,
at
like
all.
it looks like every part of America
Has that place, yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Like
I don't know. I couldn't pick a favorite, to be honest.
I
with you.
mean,
No.
yeah. It's like, I would go everywhere.
I would-
Michigan looks lovely.
I want to go with
Yeah.
his water, sea,
Sea, yeah, mainly.
ocean,
Seafood. All food.
seafood
American.
diet.
Yeah.
Seafood, you eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does look beautiful. One day.
Yeah, I think we should maybe plan a few trips to America.
Well, yeah, or just
Yeah.
one really long one.
Yeah, one for like 4 months.
Homeschool the kids for like a year and just go traveling
Yeah.
in an
that would be
RV.
so
Oh, you
good.
heard that. What about your hockey?
Oh well, we can't.
Yes,
Anyway,
we
guys, thank you
can.
so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Our merch, and that is all down in the description if you want to help us with our mission to journey to America, hopefully this year. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day. Peace. Bye.
Bye.